In this video, we're going to be having a look at the very large Mattel Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom Thrash and Throw Tyrannosaurus Rex. Simply move T-Rex's tail to get a thrashing and throwing action, along with some pretty cool and scary sound effects. Before we check out all the cool sound effects on T-Rex, let's figure out how tall she is, or at the very least, how long she is. From tail to the end of her nose, she's at 21 inches in length. Pretty impressive, I have to admit. And from the bottom of my backdrop to the very top of her head, she's about 8.5 inches. Obviously, for some scale comparisons, you're probably going to want to see how this T-Rex stacks up against the extreme chomping T-Rex, which we just looked at in a previous video. If we extend the tail out as to be the proper gauge, the one in the front, the extreme chomping T-Rex, is give or take, well, what was it, about an inch or so on either end. You know, let's go ahead and take the tape measure again. From her tail to her tip is 19 inches long. And again, this one here was 22 inches long. So that works out to be about roughly an inch off on both the nose and the tail. While we're also looking at some scales, let's see how this T-Rex stacks up against some of the other dinosaurs we've looked at over the course of these reviews. There is the action pack, the Velociraptor Blue. Let's see what else we can bring in. Here is the Dilophosaurus, also from the attack pack. Here is 3 3/4 inch little tiny Owen, now dwarfed by the dinosaur. Here's also Claire. Bring those ones in. And why don't we bring in, here's the Roarivores Allosaurus. Now, one of the other things that I've mentioned, without knocking all these other dinosaurs down, in the previous video, and I think it was the Gallimimus review, if I'm not mistaken, one thing I wanted to do, providing that the Gallimimus would have stood better, was to get a whole bunch of these and have them running in the packs as the T-Rex was chasing and eventually chomping down on one of them. So for that sake, we'll bring in the Gallimimus, which is, of all the dinosaurs we looked at, the worst standing one. Let's move Blue out of the way here. There we go. Put the Gallimimus right there. I suppose, yeah, see, it's a horrible to stand dinosaur, but I think it's probably, it may work better, I think, using the extreme chomping T-Rex along with Gallimimus. Now, this all sits well on the idea of these actually being able to stand. This dinosaur is just the worst for actually being able to stand properly. But you can see again, like, how the T-Rex stacks up among all these other ones here. Here again, we've got the Velociraptor Blue. Here's the other blue, or here's the other Velociraptor as well, Velociraptor Green, from the action packs. Now, I want to bring the extreme chomping T-Rex back in as basically the starting point where we can do the comparisons between the two dinosaurs. The reasoning why I wanted to bring this one in was that I feel personally like this T-Rex, this one right here, the Thrash and Throw T-Rex, I find seems to be proportionately better in scale to itself, like all the individual ends of it, versus the extreme chomping T-Rex. This one, of course, had the problem where, this one had the problem, without triggering this one, this had the problem where it had that additional collar, which did look a little on the awkward side, I have to admit, on the T-Rex. They've gotten, of course, rid of that altogether, because that's not an articulation point on this dinosaur. Instead, what you are treated to here is, I think, just again, a more accurately proportioned version of the T-Rex. I happen to also think, too, that the coloring is a little bit better on this one as well. Getting a look at the T-Rex, it's just a beautiful looking representation of the female T-Rex from the movie. I will say, though, that the coloring, they have still yet to fix the problem with the jaw. You can see that the jaw is a separate piece of plastic for starters and molded in this plastic color, but it's not even close to being the same cream color that makes up the underbelly. I mean, it's close enough, but certainly from a distance that you notice it's not quite gelling, it's not quite matching to the underbelly. Speaking of underbelly, there is the battery compartment as well as the speaker system that's going to project the sound out from the T-Rex when we eventually get a look at all the features. A couple of tab points here as well. You'll also notice too that this one has the QR. I keep wanting to call it QR because it's a scannable label that translates into digital information. So it's kind of like a QR code. But this one does stick out a little bit further. And the reasoning for that is because it allows for the stomping action if you want to have the dinosaur, like if you want to take the dinosaur and go like this. This is when I love doing reviewing. It will make the stomping action, so to speak. And then, of course, you've got the moving tail there as well. Also, some of the little details here that I find missed their mark on the extreme chopping T-Rex are much more prevalent here on this. Not only do you have the nice skin texture, which has been fairly consistent with all the dinosaurs to the defense of Mattel. Like, they did do outstanding jobs on these. But it's when you get these larger dinosaurs where you can see some of the more intricate details, such as the slash marks running down the side face area and really on the under jaw area of the T-Rex, making up also the sides here as well. Now, consistently, it's not the same on both sides. In fact, you only have a few gashes on the one side. You have many more on the other. They are deep-rooted gashes, although they have not gone in and painted them. If they had gone in and maybe given a slightly darker, almost like this color here, if they had darkened the areas in there on the sides, so at the very least, something fell in the background, you would be able to see those little gashes a little bit more pronounced, I would think. The scale work on the T-Rex here is really nicely done. Again, you can open and close the mouth. The tongue has been molded against the bottom of the jaw, so it doesn't stick out, unfortunately. But it's been given a nice sheen coat to it, so it does look like it's actually wet and slick. The teeth are very nicely sculpted in there as well. I think I like the head sculpt a little bit more on this one than I do on the extreme chomping one. And again, there's the, you know what, I'll bring the two side by side so you can see. The recessed areas around the eye, I think, is really where it shines the most on the larger Thrash and Throw T-Rex versus the smaller one. The darker color that they put around the eyeballs definitely make the eyeballs stand out a lot better than I think they did on this one right here. And I don't at all want it to sound like the moment now I'm looking at this T-Rex that I'm disappointed with this one. This one, again, is a good entry point, which I mentioned at the beginning, really at the end of the review of this one. It's a good entry point if you don't need necessarily sound effects. If you want just a really nice dinosaur version of T-Rex, something that you could pose and something that has the means to be able to be posed, this one also benefits from the fact it's got the tongue sticking out, which this one here unfortunately does not have. So there are merits for getting one over the other, or potentially really getting both here. We'll look at the posability on T-Rex, and then we'll have a look at all the gimmicks and sound effects. There's a lot going on with this one, and would explain then why this one's about a $20 difference between the extreme chomping and then this one here, and then there's another about a $20 price point between this one and the larger T-Rex that eats, which I don't even know if I'm going to necessarily pick up yet. I haven't decided yet. But in the way of its posability on this T-Rex, it does have the forward and back motion on the legs, although the legs don't move all that much, I have to admit. The legs split out, but they don't really move back and forth all that much. And a lot of that may have something to do with the fact that there is technically a trigger button here on the underside, which would have a wiring running through and connecting to the main belly, which may explain why the legs don't do the greatest of jobs moving. You really wouldn't want to start abruptly causing any damage to those wires by moving the legs back and forth. The lower feet rotate back and forth, more so just to compensate for its footing so it does stand and doesn't topple over. And then really the only other posability is the arms, these little tiny T-Rex hands. which are slightly softer in material here. They do move back and forth, and they don't really move out that much. It's more so just a rotation, just a hinge happening here. A lot of everything else on this T-Rex is all heavily influenced by the tail. The tail controls, essentially what you're doing is like a rudder, you're steering it back and forth, and then that's going to control the neck as well as the head and the mouth of the T-Rex. The chomping or stomping action is solely on its own. So really, you could control that without really doing anything else to the T-Rex, and you can just have it stomping along the ground, chasing after perhaps Gallimimus, if you had ones that unfortunately did actually stand as opposed to the ones that we did get. Anyways, so let's go ahead and look at the gimmick here. So again, I'm going to grab the tail here, and I'm basically just going to rock it back and forth. You can also hinge it up and down as well, but we're going to start by swinging it back and forth. And you can see that it moves the neck back and forth. And it works on two separate hinges. One hinge here, one hinge here. It's almost similar to a snake. If you rotate, if you ever gotten those snake toys where you move the tail, it controls the front head of it too, and it gives you like a like a snake slithering. That's essentially what it's doing here too as well. Now to open the mouth, you're simply just going to press down on the tail, and it's going to move the tail, and it's basically going to rock the T-Rex up, and it's going to open its mouth. There we go. When I had picked this up, I'm going to actually spin this around here. When I had picked this up, I had to go through a couple of T-Rex because it looked like a couple had been opened up or attempted to be opened up by kids or adults, I guess, that were looking to play with it. So I had to kind of go through a couple of them and find one that actually worked properly. So I'm going to grab the body here. Let's see if I can actually get it to roar. It was roaring earlier. There we go. And you're just basically going to grab the tail, like I said, and bend it down. And while you're doing that, if you bend it down, you can sway it back and forth as well. So you do have a lot of control to it. One thing though, it's not as easy to trigger the roaring sounds as it is the swaying and thrashing sounds. So again, you can move this back and forth. This is a lot easier to activate the audio than it is on the actual roaring effect. And again, we'll just do, let's see if I can get a close-up happening here. I'm going to pull that tail down. See, it's not always the most responsive. Oh, you know why? Because I have to have the button down. I have to have it pressed down when I do it. Yeah, see, it's not always the most responsive. Side to side more so, but getting the head to actually tip up. There we go. Let's try this again. One more time. And one other thing too, as we wrap up this review, not only can you tip it up for the roaring effect, which again doesn't seem to always, there we go. But if you tip the tail down, it also clamps as well. Now let's see if I can find, I wonder if I can find a small enough dinosaur. It may not actually catch it, but let's see if we can give it a try here. We're going to put the Velociraptor green right there. And I'm going to just tip the tail up. And maybe two, actually, you know what? We have the Gallimimus after all. Let's put the Gallimimus right there and see if we can catch it. If that is, I can actually get it to stand. We'll just lay it down. Let's see if I can grab it. One more time. No, it's just not grabbing it well enough. But you could have it so that you could put a smaller enough dinosaur. Maybe this one might be even too big. You could put a small enough dinosaur in its mouth if you want to display the T-Rex like this on display. I couldn't, of course, leave this part out. We're going to go ahead and scan the code, the little label on the underside of the Thrash and Throwing T-Rex. So we'll go ahead and go into scan. Now, if you're watching this as the second T-Rex review, I've already reviewed a T-Rex, the Extreme Chomping T-Rex, and I've unlocked the T-Rex in here. So this will now be the second one. I'm going to go ahead and take the QR or the dino code here on the underside, scan it, and let's see what we get for the T-Rex. Will it look a little bit better than the previous one? No, sadly. It says dinosaur actually already collected, but I don't think we actually got that before from the velociraptors that we've scanned. As a result of that, we still have... I'm going to go back in the collection here. Isn't that rather interesting? It gave you only an option to scan one T-Rex. I'm still on the fence as to whether I'm going to grab that third T-Rex, the one that actually eats. Maybe that will unlock the second T-Rex, but it seems odd that they don't let you scan a T-Rex the second time around. Let's just check the stats and see if there's maybe something we've missed. The Tyrannosaurus rex lived during the Cretaceous 68 to 66 million years ago. I do believe we're experiencing a sense of deja vu here. She is a carnivore preying on other large dinosaurs. And lastly, fossilized footprints suggest the Tyrannosaurus may have hunted in groups. So it is, in fact, the exact same information as the one that we had already done. Interesting, though, to note at the top, it says Tyrannosaurus rex 1 of 2. So I'm wondering, though, if the second one happens to be the larger $80 price point T-Rex. Oh, that's a bit of a bummer. What's not a bummer, though, is the Thrash and Throw Tyrannosaurus rex, a nice, large, meaty-sized version of the T-Rex, bigger, of course, than the one that we looked at before, the Extreme Chomping T-Rex. This one has the benefits of the sound effects and the motion. Although I have to admit, though, the moving of the T-Rex side to side works much more effectively than opening and closing the jaw. The pointing of the tail down to grab onto prey, so to speak, is not the most effective thing either, but at the very least, it works more times than the roaring action. The roaring action, you have to just get the tail just right for it to not only open its mouth, but to let out a giant roar. So it's finicky at times, yes, I will admit that. But I do like the look of this one a lot more than the Extreme Chomping T-Rex. This one just looks proportionately more accurate. Like a lot of the length and the neck and stuff like that look more accurate to the T-Rex that we see in the movie versus the Extreme Chomping T-Rex. Again, I'm not taking anything away from the extreme version of it. That one was good for if you wanted just something that was posable. And it did benefit from the fact that it also had the tongue, which this one does have a tongue, but it doesn't stick out like the other one. So it's a matter of preference. You, of course, could get both. Of the two, though, I would probably go with this one because it does have the benefits of the sound effect and it looks a little bit more accurate to T-Rex in my own honest opinion. That being said, I'm probably on the fence. I may very well lean closer towards not picking up the largest T-Rex because, again, it just has the eating function to it. And I really think it's just a really big dinosaur. Again, my opinion may change. I may still pick it up. I don't really know yet. There's a lot of things I don't really know, but what I do know, though, guys, is there's more videos coming your way. We're going to have a look at some more Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom stuff, so stay tuned for that. And, of course, if you haven't had a chance to hit that little subscribe button down below, that I do also know of. That will guarantee you that when new videos are coming onto this channel, you guys will never miss a beat. Make sure, as well, you head over to my playlist entitled Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, so you can have a look at all the stuff that I've reviewed up to this point, as well as all future videos will also be in that playlist also. Also head over to my main page where you can scroll down to all the videos that I've done up to this point as well. See if there's anything that you may have missed along the way. Always like reading new comments in old videos. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.